Hi, this is part 3 of the Wildflower tutorial video series. Today we're going to be talking about object editing. To edit objects, we need to select the Objects layer by clicking on the 3 button in the upper right hand corner of the window, or pressing 3 on your keyboard. When you do, the quick pick box will change to show the different object types available. For now, let's select the first object type, the tile object. We'll move the player to a new screen by pressing M. You can place a new object in the game by pressing the Z key on your keyboard. This drops a new object of the current type wherever the mouse is. Whenever you have an object selected, it will show some information about the object on the bottom of the window. The first thing shown is the object ID, which is a unique identifier for the object. Whenever you place an object, it will be given a new ID. Then it shows you the type, position, angle, and size of the object, a description, and a list of parameters. Below that is an attributes box where you can type in those parameter values. You can use this to create custom objects in Wildflower. Let's make this sign display a message by entering the hash symbol and then whatever message you want. The hash symbol is required to skip over the initial parameters using default values, which will make it look like a normal sign, skipping to the message parameter and showing whatever message we've entered. You can use this to display helpful information to the player about where to go and what to do. Tile objects have other parameters too that you can use to further customize the object. The first parameter is an image, which can be any of the tile sheets in the Wildflower Images folder. For this example, we use NPCs 8x8. Then a frame references one of the frames in that image when counting from the upper left corner. Frame count is used for animated tiles. For now, let's just use 1 to indicate that it's not animated. The portrait is the frame in the portrait's image that slides out on the map screen when the message is displayed. You can add new portraits to the portrait's image in the images folder. And for a cat, that would be portrait 3. Let's use default values for all the other parameters and see what happens. You'll notice that the portrait is different, as is the cat displayed there. Tile objects have even more parameters that you can learn about from either the example world or the Wildflower wiki. Tile objects are one of the fastest objects for the game to update, but if you want to have moving objects, you'll have to use something else. For example, NPCs. We'll select an NPC type from the quick pick box and place it in the game by pressing Z. It looks a lot like our tile object, but works kind of differently because it has a different description and it also has different parameters. The first parameters are the same as the tile object, which are the image, and a frame count, and a portrait. Let's paste in what we already had for our tile object to start out our NPC. NPCs also have parameters that allow you to control how far they move. The move X and move Y parameters can be used to make an NPC move on screen. This is the value in pixels of how far an NPC will move. CFTO screens are 128 pixels, so you want to gauge it based on that. I forgot to animate this NPC. So let's make this NPC animated, and let's also change it to use a different image. In this case, I'll use the NPC's 8x16 frame 0, and I already have animated sprite there with a 10 frame animation cycle, which are 4 frames for walk, 1 frame for standing, and then that's mirrored to make up 10 frames. And he has a different portrait also. You might want to make new portraits for your NPCs. There's a lot more space here to use. This guy is portrait 8. Let's make him say something different. Okay. Now when we talk to him, his portrait slides out, and we talk to this cat, its portrait slides out. Like most types of objects, NPCs can be set up to kill the player, so they can be made into a simple type of enemy. Another type of object is the crate. Crates can be physically acted with the player and other things in the game, like air currents and conveyor belts. The player can push and pull crates and use them to activate buttons, which can be used to make puzzles. Crates can also be customized by changing their image, like the NPC. For example, let's make a larger sprite by using the sprite's 16 by 16. And entering a frame of 0 is good for that. Of course, you can make crates and NPCs and tile objects look like whatever you want. One of the things crates can be used for is to be pushed onto buttons. Buttons serve a special function in your game because they can trigger other objects to do things. Buttons accept a list of trigger IDs, which reference objects that get notified when the button is touched. For example, you can use buttons to create doors. Instead of dropping an object to make the door, let's just copy and paste something from somewhere else in the game. For example, right here is a tile object that's made to be solid that's used by this button to make a door. Let's copy that same thing with Control C and paste it up here. We'll move some of this stuff out of the way. How about? I'll copy another one. And a door wouldn't be complete without some kind of ceiling to block me in. And we'll put a few coins in there. We'll connect the button to these tile objects by first entering a hash symbol, like we did for the tile object, to skip over its initial parameters to the trigger ID list. The trigger IDs will enter the object ID for these other tile objects that compose the door. That's 3104 and 3105. When you do this, it will connect the button to the tile objects with a blue line. This shows you that the tile objects are connected to the button. When the button is triggered, those tile objects will become invisible and non-solid. You notice NPCs do not activate buttons because they're not physical, like the player in crates. Another common way to use button is like a switch. There are some examples of this in the example world. It's basically just a button that has a different frame off and frame on, and it's also set to be a toggle and not be a half height like a normal button would. Let's turn our button into a switch by copying and pasting a switch's attributes from somewhere else in the game. Switches will stay on, unlike buttons, so you don't need to put a crate over the button to keep the door open. Buttons can trigger other object types too, even other buttons. Explore the example world and check the Wildflower wiki for more examples. Another type of object that works kind of like a button is a trigger box. You might want to scale a trigger box by holding down Control and the left mouse button at the same time. Let's connect this trigger box to the same tile objects that the button switch was by copying and pasting its trigger IDs into the trigger box attributes box. We'll also move this trigger box to be overlapping with what we've created before. This creates an automatic door that automatically opens and shuts behind the player. You can use trigger boxes and switches to create all kinds of interesting functionality in your games. Another type of object is the door object. Doors connect different parts of the map together. You can easily create doors by placing two doors and setting their connect door ID parameter. That's the object ID for the other door. This door is 3129, so we'll click on the other door and enter 3129. The other door is 3128, so we'll enter 3128 for the other door. This will create a link between those two doors in the game. You'll also notice that it will display a door tiles wherever the door is placed, to let the player know that there's a door there. If you'd like, you can make smaller doors or even invisible doors. You'll notice when I zoom through the door, the player is warped on the map to the new location. Another special feature of doors is to allow access between outdoor and indoor areas. Wildflower has the bottom 4 rows of the map reserved for indoor areas. These screens can be connected to any screen in the top part of the map. When a player loads up the game, they'll see that their game is only 20 screens high because the bottom 4 screens are reserved for indoor areas. Let's create one of these indoor screens and see what happens by dropping one of the objects and quickly filling out a little interior area. Also going to generate the minimap, so we'll be able to see the differences of what the minimap is when I move through the door. Now you'll notice because I generated the minimap, it takes a little bit longer to update, and that's only going to happen the first time after you change an image or the minimap. Now, pay attention to the map when I go through this door. I'm actually staying in the same place on the map, even though I went through a door to a new area. And all of the neighboring Sitio cubes are going to stay as they were. The last type of object we'll look at today is the object spawner. By default, an object spawner looks like a turret that will fire projectiles that kill the player. You might want to rotate your object spawner by holding down Shift and the left mouse button. Object spawners can even fire on an angle if you'd like. Another common use for object spawners is to make a crate spawner. For this example, I'm going to copy one of the ones in the example world and paste it into our area. You'll notice that it uses a different image and frame. It also fires a different object type. Object spawners allow you to pass the spawn attributes for the object type it's fired to the spawner. This way you can create very customized object spawners. In this case, it's going to wait for this crate to be destroyed and then spawn another crate. Hopefully I won't get killed by the projectile spawners when I do this. When I push the crate into the fire, the object spawner will automatically create another crate. Wildflower has many other object types and parameters that can be used to customize those objects. If you'd like to learn more, check out the Wildflower example world. This will show you many different types of objects and give you some ideas of how they can be customized. You can also check the Wildflower wiki, which will give in-depth information about objects and show you what the parameters are, their default values, and more information about how they work. You can get Wildflower for free on SourceForge. The full source code is also available. And that wraps up the Wildflower tutorial on objects. Thanks for watching.